Hello ladies, and welcome to another episode of the Tracy Gold Show. And today we are going to be talking about how to wear vintage clothing and look modern at the same time. So if you felt that you can't wear vintage because maybe you are a woman over 40, 50, 60 and beyond, then you are going to want to tune into this because we're going to tell you why you can and you can look modern at the same time, which is fabulous. I have a phenomenal guest today, Milena from Milena's Vintage Boutique, and I can see Milena's in here, so I'm just going to send her a quick request. Milena, here we go. I'm sending you the request. Okay, Milena, it says that you need the latest. Okay, can you just click the request? It says that you need the latest Instagram version in order to join. So can you is there an option for you to click to join? That would be awesome. Otherwise, if you can log in with another phone, that would be helpful. Okay, so while she does that, let's just have a little bit of a chat. I absolutely love vintage. Absolutely love vintage. I have been wearing vintage for a very long time, and I am in my late 40s. So I think that vintage is a wonderful and sustainable way to dress. It's also really fun because you can wear something that is completely unique to you. So, okay, Milena, you say nope, as in you don't see a button. I'm going to, It just says that you don't have the latest version of, okay, I'm going to try this again, send request.
Ask it to request. So I've sent you a request to join the room. If you can just accept that, then you should be coming in. It says we're waiting for you. Don't we just love technology? Sometimes it works extremely well and sometimes it's very challenging. So we're just waiting for Milena. She's got some phenomenal pieces to show us today that is going to absolutely wow you and get you very excited about wearing vintage clothes. Hey, so
Hi,
good to see you. It's okay. It's okay. This is the joy of technology, right?
Yeah, obviously. Well, I looked and the update happened 2 days ago. So of course, within the past 48 hours, I didn't update my phone and my app. So I apologize, everybody.
That's absolutely fine. In fact, I think I only updated on Tuesday because I was having a problem with another with another guest as well. And I thought, oh, maybe I should just update it and check.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for joining us, Milena. Before we get stuck into the really exciting stuff about how we can wear vintage clothing and look modern, because you and I both know that we can do that, right?
Yes.
And we're very excited about doing that. I'd love to hear your story of how you started your business.
Sure. So I went to school for fashion design and business in New York, but I always loved collecting vintage clothing, having things that were different than everybody else. I began working at Olive's, very vintage, which was in Brooklyn in 1999, and then finished school and just, wrote a business plan and got a loan, opened up my shop in 2003, and here we are.
That's incredible. So you
Thank you.
knew exactly what you wanted to do as you came out of fashion school.
Yes.
That's pretty remarkable because I
Yeah.
went to fashion school and it definitely took me a while to find where I wanted to be, and I did a whole bunch of other things, and it took me a while, but you knew exactly, you were just laser focused.
I always knew that I wanted to work for myself, that it was just like a drive that I'd always had. And I thought, when I was in my early 20s, let me try this, see if I like it. What I learned in a year of business is, what I would have learned in a year of school, I felt like. So there's just so many other lessons out there than just being in college. Not that college isn't a good skill to have, but you're just exposed to a lot more and you meet other people too.
Yes.
So.
And so, Milena, how has it been during the pandemic? Because I met you at the Manhattan Vintage Fair. In fact,
Yes.
I have my fabulous coat that I'm going to show
good.
everybody with me. Because when I first moved to New York, I came to the Manhattan Vintage Fair and I was in search for the perfect winter coat. And I found it at your stall. But we used to do the Manhattan Fair quite often. I think 4 times a year, right?
It was 3 times a year. So it was April, October, and February. So typically my boutique, we only do the October and the April show.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So
And
those are the
then
ones I must have been to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful vibe. It's great vendors. It's set up really, really well. Everybody's very friendly. The inventory is insane, a broad range. So this time they wanted to do it safely and within the law, obviously. So they had about half the amount of vendors that they did before. And then they also did limited ticket sales and timed ticket sales. So you
Yes.
had to come in
Yes.
within a time frame. Masks, of course, were required. And really, I think everybody was lovely. We had no problems. Everybody was wearing a mask. Everybody was using
Yes.
hand sanitizer, and people were excited to shop. Yeah.
Oh, I tell you, I came there and I tried on those divine purple boots, and I must tell
Yes.
you that if you want to see the video on that, you can go to Tracy Gold Fashion Tips on Instagram. But I had so many comments of going, "Oh my goodness, Tracy, those are so divine."
Yeah.
And Milena, I loved the show. I think it was extremely well handled,
Me
and
too.
I didn't feel unsafe. I didn't feel like it was super crowded, and it was just so wonderful to touch and feel clothing again and to be
Yes.
around people that have a love for vintage.
I think so too. Yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
hoping that when we get to October, we can do it like how we used to. But, as we all know, the pandemic has forced all of us to pivot and have different expectations. So, and the
Yes.
other thing that was great about the show is there were so many online shopping abilities for people that you could join a lot of live videos, and a lot of bloggers and influencers were there
Yes.
showcasing their favorite pieces from multiple vendors. So, and that's exposure that as a small business owner helps us in the long run. It doesn't just help us during that 2-day show.
Exactly, exactly, because it shows the kind of signature that you have for your shop, and
Yes.
then people want to see more. Because that's also what's so beautiful about vintage is that if they're one of a kind pieces, you're not going to have
Mm-hmm.
somebody else wearing the same thing. You don't go to an event and see someone wearing the same dress.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Milena, how did you cope with, because I know you're in Westchester, Pennsylvania. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
I have a funny story. A good friend of mine, I was due to come to QVC because I'm a QVC presenter, and I was supposed to meet Katy Perry. I was selected to do her, to represent her shoe collection.
So fun.
And I know, but then COVID hit. But I was due to come up to QVC on March 25th, I think, in 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, "Tracy, I have to take you to this amazing shop, this vintage shop." And that was your store. So I didn't get to meet Katy Perry. I also didn't get to do, because everything was put on a hard pause
Sure.
because of COVID. But how did you pivot? I hate that P word,
I
that
know.
pivot.
I know.
But how did you kind of redirect your business so that you could keep going during that time?
So for me, one of the most important things was also my mental health and that of my staff, right? So in the beginning, we were all very concerned and didn't know, do you wear one mask? Do you wear two masks? How much we have to clean the
Mm,
services? Do we have to clean the food? Like, it was just very overwhelming, I think, for everybody. So
yes.
I made the personal decision to completely close the store down and just do online services and shopping with people. We did appointment only shopping. So people were able to just kind of go onto Google or onto our website and make an appointment to come in. And that way they could have more of a one-on-one experience. Um,
Yes.
that early on was just more comfortable for us. Now
Yes.
the store is open 5 days a week, and we do still limit the number of people in the store at a time. Masks, of course, are required. We still do a ton of cleaning. So there's a lot more work involved, but the people that do
Mm.
make the effort to come out, I think, are really happy to be here and happy to be shopping vintage and sustainably too.
Yes, yes.
So,
In fact, for me, Milena, I have to say that, after coming to the show on last weekend, or
mm-hmm.
sorry, yes, on Saturday, I was even further inspired to save up my money, save up the budget that I have to spend on clothing and come to the shows and spend the money there.
Yeah,
Because there were so many amazing, beautiful pieces that were so unique and that nobody else would have, and that
right.
I felt I could just seamlessly bring into my wardrobe and really make a statement with.
Mm-hmm.
So, I feel like it's worth purchasing vintage pieces, not just from the sustainability perspective, but also from
Right.
the style perspective. But then it makes me feel good because I'm being more sustainable. It's
Right.
ethical shopping. It's got the heart in it, right?
And, there's only so much joy we can all get out of going to Target. Let's be real, right? I
Crochet!
mean,
Crochet!
coming into, a curated shop or even like a thrift store, if that's your thing, that there's the thrill of the hunt that's there. There's
Yes,
knowing that you are supporting a small business owner, and
exactly.
knowing that you're getting, like you said, an ethical piece. And yes, there's a little bit more work involved, but there is a romance to it, right?
Oh, I agree. I agree. I love that, Milena. One of the things I love about that is that there are stories to tell about
Yes.
each piece, right? So,
Mhm.
like for instance, my coat, well, let me just show you. So it's very heavy.
Yes.
This is my winter coat that I purchased from Milena at the vintage fair years ago. And the lining was really bad. So
Mhm.
I replaced the lining. See my
So fun.
obsession with red, I know. So I actually ripped the lining out and I took it to my seamstress and I created, I just replaced the lining and I hand sewed it in. And then every once in a while, I just need to repair it and give it a little bit of a touch here and a touch there. But I love it. And it's like a
Yeah.
1940s. It's so
I remember
unusual.
it
And
has a
I
bit of a
have,
swing, right? It's almost like a
oh,
princess
it has the
style.
whole, yeah, I know you
Yes.
can't see, but so it nips into the waist there. And then it has this beautiful swing coat. And I mean, I couldn't find anything like this, even remotely the same. And I
No.
have people stopping me in the street saying, where did you get your coat?
Right.
And then there's a story like, oh, I went to this vintage fair and I met this amazing woman and I purchased it, and so there's a story with every piece. And I love that you say it's not just about the hunt and the find, but then there's a story behind them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of our Instagram live videos that we do, when we are allowed, when I go into house calls, which is somebody who has a large volume of clothing or jewelry that we're buying, is trying to tell a little bit about the story of those people, but not violating their privacy, right? So we never
Yes.
share their names, we never share their location or, money, any of those details. But we do say, like recently we went into a house that was about an hour away from my store, and the woman was a model. Like, so she was a model for Chevrolet. She would get flown to Detroit, and she was
Mm.
one of the people that would drive the cars up to like the large turnstiles and just kind of showcase the cars.
Wow.
She never had children. She married a man that owned a large construction company. And so
Hmm.
he told her, we're going to have a lot of parties, and I never want to see you wear the same thing twice. So all of
Wow.
this was communicated to me by her niece. Her niece is in her 60s. And actually, the two-piece blue outfit that I wore to the vintage show was from her collection, and it actually had a matching bandeau. But I felt like wearing a
Wow.
bandeau to the show when I was working was a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
But her niece told me the story that this woman had to learn all the details of all the cars in case she was asked, and that men would always try to trip her up and say, oh, this is a whatever, whatever engine. And she would have to say, well, no, actually, it's this. And just the
I
pride
love
that went
that.
into what she did.
That
Um,
is beautiful.
yeah, and she really took
Yeah.
good care of her clothes, and it's nice to have those stories. Oh, the boots that you profiled, the purple boots.
Yes.
The
Mm.
woman I bought those from got them from Nancy Sinatra's sister.
Wow.
Then Nancy Sinatra, these boots were made for walking, right? She and her sister would get shipped all of these free boots when the song came out. And then this client of mine, who is also about 60, went to an estate sale and purchased them there. So I don't have any
Wow.
paperwork proving any of it. It's a shame, but it's a pretty good story. And you can tell that the boots are from that era and they were well cared for. So
Absolutely. They're beautiful. I mean, I absolutely. In fact, did you sell them, Milena?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay. Then I can stop lusting after them.
Yeah, it was very
Yeah.
fun.
So, okay, let's get into the practical stuff because I
Sure.
have heard women over 40 say, I don't know about wearing vintage because I feel like I'm just going to look like I kept my clothes
Right.
from previous eras, or
Yeah.
it's going to make me look old-fashioned or it's going to make me look old.
Right. Or they think
What
I've
would you
already
say to
worn it
that?
once. Why would I wear it again? Right.
Yes, I wore it in one time in my life, so why would I want
Right.
to wear it now? Mm.
So in my boutique, we carry close to 100 years worth of fashion. So we have things, past the last turn of the century too. So we do, 1890s up to about the 1980s. So
Mm.
depending on what era you're going for and what decade you're born in, certain things may resonate more with you than others. One thing I think is very important to also consider your body style. because
Yes.
every decade had a really specific silhouette that it was more flattering to. Like right now, I see a lot of younger kids wearing the high-waisted jeans. If I wear high-waisted jeans, the world might end. Like it's over. It's not a good decision
The
for
world
me.
might end. That's putting a lot of responsibility on a pair of high-waisted
Yes,
jeans.
it is. So I think of, look at your body style. What is flattering to
Mm,
you, right? Also, to
mm,
consider that a lot of these modern day clothing companies are taking inspiration from vintage companies. So
absolutely.
they're coming to stores like mine, and they're, getting inspiration of the prints and the silhouettes and the shape of sleeves. So you could come into my store and see a top maybe, and then think, oh, well, this kind of looks similar to one you saw maybe at Free People or Anthropologie.
Yes.
Had you maybe seen it in multiples in a different setting, you may interpret that top differently.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
mixing and matching these pieces that you identify with, that are complementary to your body style, that, are colors that you enjoy, into your modern wardrobe is a better way of doing it. I think if you walk into a vintage store and tend to do this head to toe look, which some people really like, but then
Yes.
you will look like you're kind of coming out of that era, as opposed
Yes.
to having like a unique style.
Yes.
Um,
And you know what? You know what I love to do, Milena, is I actually love to mix vintage pieces with contemporary pieces.
yes,
So
yes.
today I'm wearing a vintage DVF dress. I wore it on purpose for our show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then this lace body stocking is actually from my own collection. And then I'll
Fantastic.
wear it with a pair of like my red boots that I was wearing at
Mm-hmm.
the show the other day. So I feel like vintage is something that you can really play around with and put
Yes,
that very unique vintage piece with something contemporary and create your own personal style that then is really timeless
yes.
and
And
ageless.
the really good pieces are timeless.
Yes,
So sometimes you might find a piece that is higher price point than you're used to spending, but consider that it is decades old, it is well preserved, and think about what is the cost per wear. So one of
yes,
the things that I brought a few examples to show what I'm talking about,
yes.
um, is this belt. So this is like a beautiful chocolate brown suede belt. It has like a great shape to it, right? I mean, you could
Hmm.
wear this over a chunky sweater, you could wear it over a dress, but it's vintage Dior,
That's incredible.
right?
That's amazing.
But if you went into Neiman Marcus and you saw this beautiful, right?
Oh yeah, you go,
For a lot of people
oh,
that are
it's deal.
conscious of purchasing leather and suede, a vintage option is a really good idea. And this is a piece
Yes,
that will last you probably 3 seasons out of the year,
yes,
right? And it'll go
yeah.
with multiple items. You could even put it over a great trench coat.
Yeah. And for me, Milena, I love that you mentioned about leather because I'm vegan and I love leather. I have a leather problem. And luckily I went to Italy pre being vegan, so I was always vegetarian, but then I kind of took on a different, I just took it to that next level and
Mm-hmm.
I just don't buy new leather. But I do buy vintage leather because leather, it's already there.
Right.
And so I think that's this great way of utilizing what's already there and making it into something that you enjoy wearing. And
Absolutely.
that way you're not, contributing to the continuation of that.
There's also a lot of vinyl options that you'll see. Like now you hear about vegan leather, right? Well, for
Yes,
instance, this adorable purse, this is from the 60s,
that's gorgeous.
and it has the look of ostrich, but it's completely plastic. It's just
It's
vinyl,
incredible.
which also means it's easier to store and to wear.
Yes.
And we usually will
And
clean the
clean.
corners if you need to with like those magic erasers. They do like a pretty good job.
Yes.
But again, it's just a really cute little piece that you could do 2 or 3 seasons out of the year. It will fit a phone.
And
Um,
I would never say that that's actually, I mean, I love that. I would walk past a storefront and see that and say, that's a beautiful bag. But I wouldn't necessarily think it's vintage. And that's the beauty of vintage is that it's,
yes.
like you say, it can look pretty modern. And I don't know about you, Milena, but the little bit that I've been following fashion, the recent fashions that are coming up, there's nothing new.
No,
There's
no, there's not.
nothing new. It's all the 70s prints coming back. It's all the, it's
Yes.
all the old stuff coming back.
Yeah. And in my boutique, we really try to focus on a trend conscious vintage. I mean, that's been a tagline I've been using for, well, June will be 18 years I've had my shop.
Yes.
So try and do things that do relate to modern day clothing, but have like a vintage twist to them and that are made really, really well.
Yes.
Trying to think. Oh, one of the things I
Milena,
love.
Heather's just come on and she said, hi, Tracy and Milena. You know,
Hi.
it was so fun. She was like, wait, how do you know Milena?
I
I
know
was
it
like,
is a small
well,
world, right? One thing
yeah.
that I personally love doing is I love vintage lingerie. I just think it's so
Oh,
sexy and beautiful and well made, and there is a way to wear that out in a way. So what I do
hmm.
is I take the vintage bed jackets, like the 1930s bed jackets. I brought a little example, like this little one that has the ladder lace in here too, and it has a little bow on the back. And so
Oh,
I'll wear this with just like a white tank top and a pair of jeans.
that's
And
beautiful.
it's
Yeah.
easy. Yeah, it has a bit of like a flowing sleeve. It's comfortable, but just a little bit different than your everyday top.
Hmm.
Um, Vintage crochet is also something that we sell to designers of clothing lines all the time. So like this is a gorgeous
Wow.
crochet dress that has a
Oh,
waist
that's
tie. These
beautiful.
always travel really well also for when we get to do that again.
Yes, for
Um,
when we get to that again. And that's the thing, right? If you find a piece that you really love, it's worthwhile getting because it isn't going to be there again.
right, right.
you know so
Yeah.
Milena, one of the little kind of guidelines that I use, and I'd love to hear your take on this, and also the
Mhm.
viewers that are on, let us know in the comments. So I was a teenager in the 80s and in the 90s and
Mhm.
I did the big hair and the
Yes.
the big baggy clothing, which to your point doesn't suit me at all. Like,
Right.
I mean, hair I have no problem with, but it was like it was high and wide and and I did all the like makeup, the tons of makeup in different colors, and my nails
Mhm.
were different. I mean, I did the whole
You
damn
did
shoot, boy.
it.
I did it fully, and there is no way I'm doing any of that again.
Right. Right.
So I tend to, the kind of the way I used to dress when I was a teenager, I don't go back to that, but I love 70s stuff. I mean, I'm a
Yes.
70s child. I was born in 73. And to me, the 70s stuff, I mean, I remember my dad had this because he had held on to all of his 70s things. And I wish I had, because at that point they were just so embarrassing, Dad. Can you get rid of them? But
Right.
he had
Right.
all these amazing shirts with those peak collars and those crazy prints in that fabric. And now I wish I was like, oh man, I should have grabbed them while I
Yeah.
could. But
Well,
so is that something that you find is helpful, or do you think it's more about the body shape? Because I think that's also a really awesome tip.
I think I mean, look, number one, the best accessory is confidence, right? If you have
Yes.
the confidence to wear something, walking down the street with your shoulders back and your head held high, you're going to look amazing because you're going to
Yes.
feel good about what yourself and what you're wearing. So that's really the first thing to really embrace when doing this is what makes you happy. Screw everybody else, right?
Yes. I agree.
And then thinking about decades, people say, "Oh, I can't wear the '60s." Well, speaking primarily about the United States, in the 60s, you can do a Jackie Kennedy 60s look, which would be more East Coast, or you could think of
Yes.
like Haight Ashbury in California, where you've got the whole hippie movement. So
Yes.
really, disqualifying an entire decade isn't really fair, right?
That's true. Because even in the 70s, so you had the disco era, and then
Yeah.
you have the psychedelic, and you still have a little bit of that hippie type vibe.
Hmm.
And, boho chic is inspired by that
Oh,
era.
absolutely.
I
And a
mean,
lot of the boho chic stuff is actually inspired by the Victorian era. When you look at
yes.
those lace blouses and the tea dresses and the Irish crochet, all of that really kind of comes back.
Yeah.
So,
So, Milena, if we're speaking to people who have not yet purchased anything vintage, what is
mhm.
the difference between vintage and thrift?
So thrifting is when you go to like a Goodwill, a Salvation Army, like more of like a donation oriented place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their inventory is relied on what people donate to them. So they're great places to go because you are contributing to a good cause, but you will spend more time sifting through new items versus vintage items. And the condition could also be a little bit wary. So there is that fun factor in there, but it's not strictly a vintage store. You're going to find, you know, Tommy Hilfiger jeans, and then you're also going to find, if you're lucky, like some great 1970s dresses. So a vintage store, my vintage store specifically, will you do, like I said, like 1970s through the 1870s. A lot of vintage stores now you'll see more 1980s and 1990s and even some early 2000s. And there's value there. It's just not what we tend to carry that much of. And then in a vintage store, most of us will purchase items one by one. Some vintage stores do buy in bulk, but we do one by one. It's just how we operate. So it is a little bit more curated. I'm not always as concerned with designer pieces here. I mean, I love them. They're great, but people were also excellent seamstresses. And like that crochet dress was handmade by someone. There's no label in that.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So we focus on, and part of what you're paying at a vintage store is the find, and it's the care. I mean, for me, driving an hour to somebody's house and spending hours going through closets, bringing everything home, I can't just show up at my boutique and hang stuff on the rack. The items have to be cleaned, maybe altered, maybe a hem came down. So part of what you're paying for is that, you know, the care and the appreciation, and then also the setup. You know, you've got a beautiful fitting room, you've got good lighting, you know, you have a clean floor. It's just things that maybe you don't always see.
All those things pre-COVID that we didn't think were that, you know, that we took for granted now are like really important.
And there's great finds at thrift stores. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean to discount them. It's just a different type of shopping.
Yeah. But I love that though. I love that you're also clarifying why sometimes the price point is a little more, because it is about the careful curation. And I think that there's kind of a blanket sticker that goes on things vintage, but it isn't necessarily vintage. And I think that careful curation, and also what I love about what you do is that you often have the stories that come with that. And that's really beautiful. You know the stories, you know where it's come from, you have an idea. And so that story can continue. And I just think I think especially now, Milena, I think that as we come out of this COVID haze and out of these restrictions, that we also need to look at rebuilding and what do we want to fill our closets with, because many women decluttered their closets during COVID, and I think many women realize they don't need so much. They don't need so many clothes, they don't need so many shoes, they don't need so many of the things that they thought this must-have seasoned items. And so I'm hoping that we're going to go in with a more conscious way of shopping and being.
Yeah,
and vintage can be part of that.
I suggest too, like taking pictures of things in your wardrobe that maybe you don't have a mate for. Like I have an album of, I have a thing for maxi skirts. I love a big maxi skirt, but not all of them do I have a matching top to go with. So I kind of struggle. Like I don't wear it as much as I would because I don't have complementary pieces. So I've taken a couple of photos of these items and saved them. So when I do go shopping, and I kind of gravitate towards these other things to say, okay, wait a minute, what is it that I'm trying to complete here? What ensembles do I have that I'm not able to wear because I don't have the proper shoes or the belt? So that way we're also conscious of the money that we're spending, but then the items that we're getting so we can appreciate other pieces.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Thank you so much, Milena. And, those of you who are watching, you can either go to her store in Westchester, Pennsylvania. It's Philadelphia, right? Philadelphia?
Yeah, we're about 40 minutes outside of Philly.
Okay. And then you also have some things that you sell online, but also if you follow you on Instagram, because you sometimes do sales on Instagram as well, right?
We do, yeah. We do a lot of posts and stories. We do IGTV videos on our vintage hauls that we get. We always love people reaching out to us and say, hey, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. Do you have any? We do PayPal, Venmo. We ship daily. So we, enjoy hearing what our customers are looking for and, meeting other vintage lovers.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Thanks.
And of course, the Manhattan Vintage Show, hopefully that's coming back again in
Yes.
October. I will be booking my tickets early,
Yeah.
coming with some budget this time.
Yeah.
So I can grab those gorgeous purple boots or whatever it is that you have in your stall.
Wonderful.
So I look forward to that. Milena, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all
Thank
of
you so
those
much.
who joined us. And if you are watching in the replay and you have questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. I will answer that. I can also tag Milena so she can answer them.
Sounds
And
great.
then also if you want to see the replays, because I know that sometimes people miss these interviews, you can go to tracygoldshow.com, and it's TRACY, gold is in the color, show.com. Do not Google it. You will find Tracy Gold from Growing Pains. I am not the same woman. So just check in the link is in the bio, and you can go there and you can actually subscribe to the newsletter. And at the end of the week on a Saturday, I send out a newsletter with all the links of the replay so that you don't miss out, because you're going to want to see these interviews. And there'll also be links to Milena's boutique from there. So thank you so much and have a wonderful
Thank you.
day.
Thanks everybody who joined.
Thanks so much.
Have
Take
a good
care.
one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.